Hi, it's Katrina! From Europe's oldest operating room to an entire ancient city found underwater, here are 8 rediscovered, lost, and forgotten places. Number 8. The Old Operating Theatre Museum. In early 19th century England, surgery was performed without anesthesia. While the wealthy were usually lucky enough to have these unimaginably painful and invasive procedures carried out in their homes, people of lesser means were relegated to the additional discomfort of being operated on in hospital wards. Listening to patients endure surgeries was undoubtedly rather distressing, and this may have been why, in 1822, the governors of the St. Thomas Hospital in central London ordered the construction of a small operating theatre in the attic of the adjoining St. Thomas Church. The operating theater was a learning environment that enabled medical students to view procedures. It also offered some privacy to less fortunate patients who had no choice but to seek treatment outside of their homes, and also made it possible for them to receive surgeries that they could not otherwise afford. The hospital relocated in 1862, and the operating theater was partially dismantled and its entrances were blocked off. Thereafter, the only access to the building's attic was via a small opening in the wall 15 feet above floor level. In 1956, a man named Raymond Russell's curiosity was piqued while he researched the history of St. Thomas Hospital, prompting him to get a ladder and investigate the attic. Some of the floorboards had been removed, and parts of the theater had been removed also, but its dusty shell was mostly intact. Russell's discovery was remarkable, as this is Europe's oldest surviving operating theater. It has since been restored and is now a museum that you can go and visit. Number 7. Mr. Straw's house. During the early 20th century, a successful grocer named William Straw and his wife Florence raised 2 sons at their home in Worksop, England. The home was built in 1905, and in 1923, the couple redecorated it to reflect the styles of the time, with features such as dark furniture and wallpaper, patterned carpets, gilt-framed oil paintings, and thick curtains. Mr. Straw died suddenly in 1932, and his grief-stricken family decided to keep the home exactly as he left it, even though they continued to live there. In 1991, the home's last surviving owner, William Jr., passed away. With no heirs to leave the house to, he bequeathed it to the UK National Trust. The house contains no rare or expensive treasures, but is unique in its own right, having remained essentially frozen in time since it was decorated by Mr. Straw and his wife in 1923. It offers a rare glimpse into what the living environment of a typical British family was like a century ago. There's even a 1932 calendar still hanging in the dining room, and Mr. Straw's personal effects, such as his tobacco pipe, hats, and coats, can still be found throughout the home. No televisions, radios, or telephones were ever installed at the residence. While the Straw House may not technically have been forgotten about or lost, it represents the rediscovery of a bygone era. Anyone who wasn't privy to the home's interior had no way of knowing about or enjoying this painstakingly preserved gem, until it fell into government hands following William Jr.'s death and opened to the public as a museum in 1993. Number 6. Notting Hill posters. The London Underground began upgrading their Notting Hill Gate station in West London in 2010. As workers carried out the renovations, they discovered a portion of tunnel that had been sealed off at the end of the 1950s. The area was once used as a link to the tube for passengers using the elevator, but lost its purpose when the station's elevators were replaced by escalators. The rediscovered tunnel was a time capsule chock full of advertisements and movie posters dating back to the late 1950s. Unfortunately, civilians never had the opportunity to gain a first-hand look at the entombed shrine of vintage posters. Howard Collins, who was the chief operating officer for London Underground at the time, reassured the public that the posters would remain secure and looked after until they figured out a way to remove the delicate historical pieces. Once renovations were completed at the station, however, the tunnel was sealed back up, with the posters still lining its walls. Perhaps it will someday be rediscovered yet again. And now for number 6. But first, be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. The more the merrier, right, subs? Number 5. The ancient city of Clontarf. In September 2017, British archaeologists uncovered the remains of an ancient city thought to have been founded by Alexander the Great. The city, known as Clontarf, had been lost for around 2,000 years. Researchers found it while flying drones in a previously out-of-bounds area in northern Iraq. Archaeologists from the British Museum gained their first clue to the site's whereabouts while going through declassified spy satellite photographs that were taken in the 1960s by the American government. They confirmed the buried city's location by flying a drone equipped with a camera through the area. The camera captured the city's outlines, including that of a large rectangular building beneath fields of wheat and barley. Until around the time of the discovery, the region was considered too dangerous to perform an archaeological dig. According to archaeologist John McGuinness, who's in charge of Iraq Emergency Heritage Management Training Program, Kalatga Darband existed and thrived during the 1st and 2nd centuries BC. It was built along the route probably taken by Alexander of Macedonia in 331 BC, while he pursued Darius III of Persia, whom he ultimately defeated at the Battle of Gaugamela. Evidence of Greek influence is present in the statues and roof tiles at the site, suggesting that the city's earliest residents were Alexander's subjects. Another lost city found. Number 4. A lost Chinese shrine in Oregon. During the late 19th and early 20th centuries, the city of Salem, Oregon was home to a crowded Chinatown filled with tenements, laundries, opium dens, markets, brothels, and cookhouses. The Chinese population in Salem peaked at a reported 367 in 1890. These residents held a variety of jobs, working primarily in hotels, restaurants, fields, and railroad construction. In 1903, as buildings were being condemned, razed, and reclaimed by the city, one newspaper declared the end of Chinatown. Its population dwindled to just 72 by the year 1920. During late 2017, a solitary piece of concrete poking through the ground near the northern border of the Salem Pioneer Cemetery was identified as part of a lost Chinese shrine. According to cemetery records, 52 Chinese burials took place on the property. A public project to unearth the shrine using the least invasive methods possible was launched jointly between the City of Salem, Willamette University, the Oregon State Historic Preservation Office, and the Friends of Salem Cemetery. Recognizing the importance of fully researching the city's Chinese-American history, Kimberly Fitzgerald, the Historic Preservation Officer for Salem, took an elevated interest in the shrine after learning that Pioneer Cemetery in downtown Salem had been nominated for the National Register of Historic Places. The shrine has actually been rediscovered several times. Construction workers stumbled upon it in the spring of 1953, and 10 years later, it was found by a cleanup crew. Number 3. Fulling Mill Cottage. In 2010, a 78-year-old recluse and former schoolteacher named Fred Sageman passed away at his home in West Sussex, England. He bequeathed the thatched roof home, which had been occupied by the Sageman family since 1870, to a local cat charity known as Cat Welfare Sussex, under the condition that his pets would be cared for and that the home was protected from being demolished or redeveloped. When members of the charity visited the property to feed Sageman's pets, they realized just how big of a task they'd agreed to. He had left behind 82 feral cats, and the 5-acre property was dilapidated and overgrown. Despite having their work cut out for them, the volunteers were eager to honor Sageman's final wishes, as he'd been a steady supporter of the organization for 2 decades. During this visit, the workers also realized they'd stumbled on a time warp. The 15th century structure known as the Fulling Mill Cottage contained no modern conveniences. There was a tin bath, a single cold tap, a mattress on the floor, a single light bulb, and a cauldron, which he cooked his meals in over a fire. The cobweb-covered dishes on the shelves had sat there undisturbed for around 30 years. There were also thousands of old books. Fulling Mill Cottage was once a thriving, well-known property. Fred's grandparents, Charles and Ellen, ran a market garden from the cottage grounds. The family also ran a popular guest house until 1959. When Fred's mother died in 1983, the home quickly began to crumble and rot. Cat Welfare Sussex trustee Julie Grant and her husband Tom decided to restore the cottage to its former glory, with plans to occasionally open it up to the public. Number 2. An abandoned apartment in Paris. In 2010, a woman named Madame de Florian passed away in the south of France, where she had lived out the remainder of her life after escaping Paris on the eve of the Nazi invasion in June of 1940. To the astonishment of the executors of Madame de Florian's estate, turns out she owned an apartment in the old theater district of Paris. The apartment had remained untouched since the Madame fled Paris in 1940 and looked exactly the same as it had 70 years earlier, minus a thick layer of dust. Experts were brought in to appraise the value of the apartment's contents, which included various paintings and beautiful furniture. One expert likened entering the home to stumbling into the castle of Sleeping Beauty. A tableau of a woman in a pink muslin evening dress caught the eye of specialist Olivier Chopin-Janvry. It turned out to be a work by 19th century Italian artist Giovanni Boldini. The woman in the portrait was Madame de Florian's grandmother Martha, a renowned actress and socialite who was also Boldini's muse. In 2013, the painting was auctioned off for £1.8 million. Number 1. Cheng. The ancient city of Cheng, which translates roughly to Lion City, was built in the eastern province of Zhejiang, China, around 1300 years ago. Cheng, which was once the center of economics and politics, was deliberately flooded in 1959 for a man-made lake and a government hydroelectric power station. The collection of ornate historical buildings remained forgotten at the bottom of Qiandao Lake, under 130 feet of water, until it was rediscovered in 2001, courtesy of a government mission to check on the remains of the 600-year-old metropolis. Everyone else had forgotten about it. Divers found Cheng in near-perfect condition, right down to the wooden beams and stairs of buildings. The city features wide streets with hundreds of arches, walls that date back to the 16th century, and preserved stonework dating as far back as 1777, depicting lions, dragons, phoenixes, and historical inscriptions. Being underwater has contributed to the remarkable preservation of Cheng by sparing it from the effects of wind erosion and other weather-related wear and tear. Since its rediscovery, Cheng has become a major diving attraction for tourists and diving clubs. The city has also attracted archaeologists and a film crew. Thanks for watching! Which of these rediscovered places would you most like to visit? Let me know in the comments below, and be sure to subscribe before you leave. See you soon! Bye!